Whether it was the shocking imagery of a barren London in 2002, when the thought of totally empty cities felt unrealistic, or the brash, loud violence of it all, you likely remember where you were the first time you experienced 28 Days Later. It's a film that feels utterly unique from the opening frame, a genuinely special movie that changed the genre, and did so while battling the adversity of city councils, angry commuters, and even the fallout of 9/11, all leading to a genre-defining horror classic whose upcoming sequel became the second most watched YouTube trailer in film history, more than 20 years later. Hard to imagine for a film that completely ran out of money before it even had an ending. This is what the fuck happened to 28 Days Later. While we all know the story of 28 Days Later starts with careless activists who just wanted to set some damn monkeys free, the story of the script begins with Leonardo DiCaprio in The Beach. Writer Alex Garland's novel had just been brought to life on screen by Trainspotting director Danny Boyle and producer Andrew McDonald. And afterwards, the newcomer handed the pair a brand new screenplay. How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. Gotcha. It was obviously 28 Days Later. Garland was a self-professed fan of the classic George A. Romero Night of the Living Dead films growing up and had that reawakened by playing the video game Resident Evil. While these are pretty obvious inspirations for a post-apocalyptic script, another less expected avenue provided heavy inspiration as well: the 1951 John Wyndham novel, The Day of the Triffids. In the novel, lead character Bill Mason wakes up in the hospital after having his eyes damaged by the poison of a triffid, a tall fictional plant with the ability to murder human beings. While he was blinded by the incident, the rest of the area was subject to a meteor shower that blinded anyone who looked at the sky. He then walks around a London in complete chaos before befriending others and heading toward a light in the distance of an otherwise dark city. There, they meet with other survivors with plans to start a colony in the countryside before learning that those plans involve polygamy, and things get foobar real fast. All the while, these giant mobile plants, which is a haunting thought if we're being honest, are after them. There's much more than this to the story of The Day of the Triffids, but the similarities and inspirations are nonetheless fascinating. Though Boyle wasn't much of a zombie genre fan, he saw Garland's script as a conduit to a story about rage. Andrew McDonald simply found himself scared while reading it, which was enough for him to use some of his National Lottery funding to help bring the script to life. Universal Studios actually had first look rights, but passed, despite the talent involved and relatively low-risk budget, which you just know keeps some suit somewhere awake in the middle of the night. To acquire the ever-unique look of 28 Days Later, Boyle reached out to now-frequent collaborator Anthony Dodd Mantle after being impressed with the camera operation on the film Festin. Mantle took a week to return the phone call, adorably thinking that it had just been his friends messing with him. Apart from casting the talented and well-known Brendan Gleeson as Big Softy Frank, Boyle set out to complete a cast of mostly newcomers and unknowns. He smartly knew that it would add to the realism and fear of the situation if we didn't recognize the faces on screen, something that worked splendidly in the casting of Robert Patrick as the T-1000 character in Terminator 2. Boyle also wanted you to have the immediate sense that everyone was dispensable. Secondly, he had a sneaking suspicion that no really good actor was going to want to be in a zombie film at the time, that these types of movies mostly benefit those who aren't superstars at the time. Enter our lead, Cillian Murphy, as Jim, who, in part thanks to his relatable performance in 28 Days Later, is very much a superstar today. Naomi Harris joined the project as the badass with well-rounded inner depth, Selena, and her career would skyrocket as well, with memorable performances in films like Moonlight and as Moneypenny in future Bond films. The final member of their makeshift family went to Megan Burns as Hannah, who later in life, fascinatingly, went on to sign with Island Records as rock act Betty Curse. Just never know what people are going to get up to. The downside to hiring inexperienced actors was just that. They were newish to acting. According to Mantle, Boyle had to really work hard to get the performances out of Cillian and Naomi at the time. I'd say it's quite clear that they heeded his advice. One of the most memorable things about 28 Days Later, apart from Jim waking up in a hospital fully ungroomed and penis out, is the utterly empty city around them. This was probably a little more shocking to see before the COVID pandemic took place, as we've all lived through a far too similar situation together not too long ago. At the time, however, it had been the tragedy of 9/11 that had given the film an all too realistic feel. 28 Days Later was already filming when the fateful day happened. Had it not been, it likely wouldn't have been greenlit at all. Often afterwards, stories like this were understandably avoided to keep from reminding viewers of the horrors of what they'd just witnessed. Blink-182, for instance, were filming their video for Stay Together for the Kids at the time of the tragedy. The video featured a Nightmare on Elm Street remake director, Samuel Bayer, ordering a wrecking ball to pulverize a building that the band was playing inside to symbolize a broken home of divorce. But the imagery of buildings being torn down alone was enough for the video to be canceled and reshot. One of the many tales of projects that never were because of their eerie similarities to real-life events. Danny Boyle also credits this as being one of the reasons that the film resonated so much at the time, with it being the first one out of the gate after 9/11 to recall how utterly vulnerable we all were, even in big cities. The visual of Jim walking around an empty city with food, cars, and money abandoned all over the streets is an insanely thought-provoking premise to begin a story with. But it wasn't an easy shot to get. Something that Garland says amounted to maybe 10 lines in the script would require them working with various members of city councils and officials to secure the impossible shots that they needed. The crew would often have a time window of just about 45 minutes to secure many wide-scoping shots featuring known areas such as Westminster Bridge and Piccadilly Circus completely empty and covered in apocalypse. Meanwhile, that required shutting down popular roadways and understandably angering those that are on their way to their morning commute. Boyle, ever the out-of-the-box thinker, strategically placed attractive and charming women in specific locations to help lessen tensions. The Sunshine director said that it was a tactical decision made simply because attractive women are much better at asking people to wait than men were. You don't get films like this made without being a problem solver. And those weren't the only problems that the crew would face, however. After having the art department cover Westminster Bridge in rubbish for their shot, of which they again had a small window to film, they spotted someone in a trolley cleaning up the bridge. Location manager Pat Karam ran onto the bridge, clock ticking, and explained to the man that he didn't need to clean it up and that they were filming, but he didn't believe him. Filming these scenes in London during what Boyle calls those brittle hours between the last clubbers crawling home and you and me going to work provided endless challenges. There was no way that they would be able to achieve shots needed using traditional camera procedures. Mansell and Boyle experimented with different solutions. They ultimately decided on using a Canon XL-H1 to not only make these scenes work, but to give the film a demonic atmosphere by employing a frantic digital shutter and giving 28 Days Later its forever one-of-a-kind look and feel. For their zombies, infected. Infected. They're not zombies. Not trying to have my house toilet papered. Athletes were often hired for obvious reasons. Though not zombies, these infected provided the aesthetic of zombies that had been jacked up with copious amounts of pre-workout. The idea was born from Garland realizing, while playing the Resident Evil games, that the slow-moving zombies didn't make the game scary, but rather your lack of ammo in dealing with them. This led to some spirited stunt performances and unforgettable frights, such as the running hordes of infected during the flat tire sequence. To create the look of the infected, they hired an on-set optometrist to put in red contact lenses said to be half the size of a table tennis ball. They base much of their design by going through a bevy of photographs detailing the different medical stages of rabies. Lovely breakfast conversation. The set is full of stories of unconventional punk rock and DIY filmmaking in order to get the movie made that's palpable in the chaos on screen. At one point, when filming a gate crash sequence, they realized a chain in the shot was deemed unsafe and could end up going through the car window. So, as art director David Bryan claims, someone on the set appeared 10 minutes later with a chain made out of Haribo gummy bears molded together and sprayed with copper spray, and it worked. As another example, the very reason that you see birds in the film, and prominently featured in the advertisements for 28 years later, I might add, is because they realized they obviously couldn't control birds showing up in the area, so they decided on the spot to add them, deciding the virus didn't kill them for whatever reason. There's such an on-the-run, make-it-up-as-we-go aspect to 28 Days Later that feels like a beautiful miracle when placed together on screen. A beautiful miracle that almost wasn't. Money had always been an issue, and a day came when Andrew McDonald had to simply say that they were done. There was no money left to finish the film. They had to stop all filming at that exact moment, and the crew literally had to pack up and leave with it unfinished. And at the point where they crash into the gates after Jim has been shot, you can literally see the film freeze frame on their faces in the car in the moment. Whether that's intentional or not, Somehow, someway, they ended up shooting not just one ending, but several. Garland wrote an end where Jim dies of his wounds as Selena tries to save him in an abandoned hospital. Another ending, storyboarded but never filmed, never featured the soldier storyline at all. It instead had the foursome attempting to save Frank, ending with Jim offering his life to give him a full blood transfusion. This was before the two realized that the science of this ending just did not make sense. All these endings are available in some form or fashion both online and on the home media special features. Of course, you can't speak of the success of 28 Days Later without the score of John Murphy, and specifically In the House, in a Heartbeat, which plays as Jim finally hits fuck it on those pervy soldiers in the rain. It's a great track to write or study to, I might add. Hell, I could brush my teeth to it and still feel kind of badass. As we already know, 28 Days Later released in 2002 and is a massive success story. The film and its modest budget of around $8 million turned out to be a surprise hit in America, which helped catapult it earning around $85 million worldwide. Suck it, Universal. The film spawned a sequel, 28 Weeks Later, and of course the upcoming 28 Years Later. Another after that, and possibly another after that if the box office works out, and we're betting it does. Not to mention several comic book iterations, an endless influence on not just zombie horror, but film overall. 28 Days Later would win multiple awards, sit high on many best horror films of all time lists, and will no doubt be messing up audiences for generations to come. Well, you know what they say. The end is fucking nigh for this video. And that is what the fuck happened to 28 Days Later.
Thank you for clicking on our video, everybody. If you like what you saw here, please make sure you like the video and subscribe and share with your friends who like this sort of content. JoBlo was created by movie fans for movie fans, and we appreciate your support.